What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's market recap and trade recap session. Today is April the 22nd, and we took one trade today, resulting in a 1-to-1 risk to reward, which happened to work out pretty nicely in our favor. There could have been re-entry points for the same trade around this level, where it could have been carried up towards the highs. But we'll go over seeing if that is potential on footprint and much more later in this video. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so let's get into the overall context for the day today, right? So right when we entered into the market, we saw a heavy buyer intuition and sentiment occur from where market opened, and that was because we did have some news at market open with FOMC members speaking, and at 9 a.m. we have consumer confidence, and at basically 9 a.m. we have Richmond Manufacturing Index. So 9 a.m. is a key time for news. So from 8:30 to 9, we essentially don't see any potential trades, right? We do see this retracement, but there's medium impact news right after. Now, looking forward, after 9 o'clock, we essentially stalled at that level, and we continued up, flipping this liquidity level on both ES and NQ. As demonstrated here, we broke through, and now we are coming back down towards the downside. Now this is where many people trading SMC could have got taken out if they did not understand the overall context of the market. Prior us, we would have thought that this liquidity sweep was hella nice and we could have carried down until these lows at least, right? But that is not the case. We simply retraced, found liquidity and buyer sentiment and power there, which we continue to move up. So we in the market were looking for continued buy side. And why were we doing so? Well, on the higher time frame confluence, just take a look at the overall point of control and other mean reversion concepts, right? So right before market open, this is, hold on. Oh yeah. There. POC is essentially hovering around these two levels right here. And since this is 1 hour, I have to move an hour back. Price was very deviated from our POC right when market opened around these levels. So since we were making strong move up and there was no real POC here, price is automatically going to be drifted and attracted to area where there's lots of volume being traded. And looking at the day now, that's exactly what happened. And I do want to highlight that we did call this out yesterday in V2, in our yesterday's V2 trading recap or market analysis session. And using the analysis, it would have carried out today as well. Because just taking a look, market continued to go upwards straight into our POC level on both NQ and ES as well. And since we had the original bias in our heads, we were able to seek long side intuition just from looking at the charts. But further confluence that provided us and allowed us to seek more towards the long side was on Bookmap. Shout out to Think with Bookmap once again. It's a great tool that I highly recommend beginners to use to get into introduction with Bookmap. So what I noticed was there was heavy liquidity up at 5,300 on ES, and we're looking for retracement to see if buyers can continue to push the price higher. And that was essentially it for this trade in terms of confluences. It was mainly just the overall trend, the V2 retracement with confirmation from Bookmap liquidity above, and our point of control up with price being gravitated towards that level. We can enter if we see the introduction of any bar signal that we notice of here. And one area could be these icebergs. These icebergs were just starting to come into play. This is where we entered in the market, and we entered on NQ, which was right around this level right here. Now we were in drawdown, almost stopped out for a bit, and let's take you through that area right there, which is around here. Yeah. So down here, we rejected from these highs, the relative highs, although we created lots of icebergs here. Now what I noticed, and there was really nothing I could do with the sells coming down as such, right? As price was continuing to go down, we either get stopped out or we reverse to go higher up. And we did exactly that. We reversed and went higher up. And there was, for me at least, today in the market, there was no real telling if price was going to continue going lower or shift upwards again. But price looked like it wanted to continue going higher, and that's exactly what we did. We came down to this level again, we held it, then we pushed back towards the upside and came up to this level. Now you may be wondering, why do we exit so early? Well, originally my actual TP was this liquidity or POC level, or this liquidity level down here, right? So that would have been a 2RR or a 3RR. And if we kept our stop more tight right to these levels, it could have been a 3 or 3.5 RR. But this is the trade which we took, and why did we exit up here? Is because we saw some invalidation signals, right? And I'll show you them right now. So what we saw in Bookmap was that lots of seller icebergs were getting introduced as we continue towards these relative areas. And we start seeing sell stops getting introduced as well. I'm not liking how we are stalling at these levels with so much seller icebergs being introduced. Additionally, on NQ, there was an area in which there was a big seller liquidity level on the NQ Bookmap. I'll pull it up right now, just give me 1 second. Okay, so here's what it shows, and it's already highlighted in color right there. Right, so we saw this big seller, I think it was around 100 or even 1,000 orders on the sell side, which held up during that level. I saw the introduction of that level, and I thought of it as a large passive seller in the market trying to prevent price from going higher. Now, there are two ways this can play out. It can either work as a magnet or it can work as a barrier. In this case, I thought it worked as a barrier, but it actually worked as a magnet. And it's hard to tell that because we are seeing lots of selling signals, but realistically, we could have held higher, potentially. But I think that exiting for this invalidation signal right here was not the wrong decision. Actually, wait, I don't think we exited there. Let me check it once again. Exited at 940, and that was, yeah, we did exit. We exited around here, and we exited there because we saw large seller stop introduction and a stall of this upper liquidity level. I wanted to see a nice breakthrough of this liquidity level, but we were unable to see that play through, and liquidity is continuing to follow price downwards. Right, you see this liquidity level? Now liquidity is starting to form this big barrier below it as well. So now that I see heavy sellers, passive sellers on ES and NQ, I signal it as a way to get out and potential area to enter if I see further confluence, right? So we exited there for a nice 1-to-1 catching 150 ticks. I'm not mad about this trade at all. We got in and out due to our system, and that was a nice play. And I do think there was some potential to enter around 950. So let's take a look at that, right? 950 is right here. So let's see what happened, right? We came into these lows, and at these lows, it does seem to be tapped into some sort of barrier. But what was really interesting was that if we had access to the footprint chart, right? Let's take a look at what happened at 950 in the morning. So at 950, right there, take a look at what happened. Do you see how there's lots of sellers coming in towards this candle right here, right? We pushed up, and in this candle, we had large seller delta come in, right? This was similar area to where we actually exited. So I'm happy that we did exit because we saw such seller delta here. Now we continue to move higher. We had seller delta here, moved higher, created both buy and sell delta. So I'm just keeping an eye on the sell delta. We are rejecting down now. So potential signs for going down. Now what I see here is very, very interesting, right? Take a look here, right? We had lots of passive sellers prior here at this level, right? Which did not get rewarded. We flipped this area. And with those passive sellers, we came down to this level, held lots of selling activity down at these lows. We had seller imbalances as well. That sell imbalances and large seller delta and highest level of delta compared to any other level in this candlestick, right? And right away from this rejection downwards, we started moving back up. So from this move back up aggressively, there could have definitely been an entry found, even at the close of this candle, seeking longs until you at least reach an area of liking, such as bookmap liquidity or even POC above, right? So if we continue to go forward until 5,300, which is where bookmap liquidity was tapped into, right? 5,300. This was our first time. This is a relative area where we tapped in. Let's take a look at these buyers. There was no real sign that buyers were getting eaten up because we're seeing buyer delta, but look how this candle closed. It's still closed towards the upside. Now, looking at this candle, we pushed up towards a high buyer delta, still pushed up. Green candle, nice candle. Now, I am trying to see. You did push nicely up on ES towards that 5,300 level, and around this area, actually, we did happen to see the reversal, right? And we saw heavy buyer delta being encouraged up at these highs, and wicks going down here, price moving upwards. But take a look where most of the volume was executed on this trade. It was executed near the high where we also had seller delta. Now, at this high volume area, once we closed, we directly saw sell down going downwards. So I do want to backtest this a bit more regarding footprint and see what this inverse ideology between seller delta and candlestick characteristics play out. You start to see heavy sellers coming in, and that's right from the sweep of bookmap, right? We see buyers coming in a lot, but we're not able to continue go higher. We are able to continue go higher there, but for this one, not really. We're not able to continue going higher. Seller delta is starting to introduce itself. Here, seller delta is introducing itself, but it's not getting rewarded. So it's all quite confusing around this area, but definitely an area to have taken partial profits. But overall, we did talk about how there was massive seller delta down at these lows, which likely got pushed out by passive buyers in the market, which do align with this barrier here on the footprint. And potentially there was more icebergs there as well, which are not shown up. But that's essentially what we were thinking, and that was some quick footprint backtesting of a potential re-entry down at this low, carrying it up to the footprint level up here. And let's just see the risk to reward on that trade, right? So if we entered on the close of this candle, right? I'm not even saying at the right next to the level, at the close of the candle, or even the highs. Let's say the highs. If we enter at the highs of that candle, or the close, we can place our stop at these lows plus 20 ticks. So I would keep it at around 150, 160 ticks. Right? And where do we target? We target this bookmap liquidity level. That's another nice 1.24 risk to reward trade. Now, potentially you could have got a better or sniper entry with the lower entry, but we get the most confirmation on the close, and it was likely that we could have entered anywhere here for potential 2 to 3 risk to reward, which would have been a great trade if taken. And that's basically it. We did some footprint backtests. We discussed the overall market sentiment. And you know what? Now that I do have some extra time, let's just set ourselves up for some future analysis as well, right? We did open the market with a big gap fill down below, which I am seeing. Let's mark out a simple POC real quick. Volume profile. And would you look at that? That's honestly quite perfect. Like, I don't even know if I need to do more than that, but simply because that gap fill and market profile line up so nicely regarding high volume nodes, there's either two scenarios, right? We either go up towards this gap fill area, or we go back down to this gap fill area. And for the time being, going down to this gap fill area is seeming a lot more significant, but with this buyer momentum, we easily could go upwards as well. Now, if we move our volume profile even more prior, yeah, it's still there. It's still there. And this one's all the way up there, so that'd be enough. But yeah, I'm liking the idea of the short side filling that gap and reverting back to the mean, but we may have to push higher before that occurs. Now on ES, let's take a look there as well. Yeah, same thing, right? This gap fill relative area, I definitely see sells occurring, but if we can't get that, we may potentially move up towards these levels here, and before we seek move down. But that's what I'm seeking from both NQ and ES. Taking a look at the VIX, what do I see? I do see this small market structure is creating higher lows, but it's not very strong. And we did gap fill up here, but if we go down to 30-minute time frame, this gap fill has been rewarded almost. It does seem like we are leaning more towards the upside, right? Because once we've left this gap fill area here, once you've left that gap fill area here, we had to push up very high until we could fill this gap again. But now we've had this gap get created, so maybe we potentially head up there, which means we would go down. But I don't see that us going down, fully filling the gap or touching these levels could be a bad guess as well. We may have to do this first before heading back up there on the VIX. So, in conclusion, what I seek happening is these are my scenarios. I either see price continuing to go downwards and come to this gap fill and point of control level, or we can head up to the next high volume node before making any move towards any move really, but potentially the whole move for tomorrow could be towards the upside or to the downside, unless we, in a rare case, see some consolidation. But even in that case, we should be able to hopefully put some nice bangers or analysis up there tomorrow. I don't think I will be able to trade during live session tomorrow simply because I do have some other schedulings that I do have to take up to, but we will do a nice market analysis session tomorrow nonetheless. That's essentially all I have here for today. I thank you for getting this far, and if you have any questions, please join the Discord. The link is in the description, or leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer them as soon as possible. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for that market analysis or potential trade recap session as well. I'll see you guys then. Goodbye.